Okay. I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome. This is a regularly scheduled public council meeting. I'll open the meeting with three quick announcements. During the public hearing a few moments ago, a pair of glasses was left behind. They're reading glasses, and if no one claims them, they actually are pretty good with my older eyesight. So, secondly, there's two members of our council that made a decision a couple of months ago to try to apply for a different job. They applied for provincial office, and the voters elected one of them on election night, and the other one had to wait until today. So I want to begin by congratulating Linda Reamer, who was elected on election night and confirmed today, for the riding of Port Moody Coquitlam. And so we have a bottle of champagne for you. And not elected on election night, but and she had to wait again till today till they counted the rest of the votes. But elected today was Councillor, now MLA for Coquitlam Millardville, Selena Robinson. Please don't open it now. No. It's been a long day of meetings. So congratulations to both of you. You'll both be leaving us. Your time on we'll save the goodbyes for another day, but there's some decisions to be made in the short term and in the long term. But the voters have made a decision, and subject to a recount, I guess, at least in one of your cases. But there we go. Last announcement. Today's beginning of Bike to Work Week. I noticed some staff members here at City Hall are biking to work. I bike to work. I think Councillor Robinson biked to work today, wearing my bike to work tie. Unfortunately, it's raining now, and I have to bike home, and so do you. So, rain gear, yeah.
I have a station wagon, Your Worship.
No. Okay. And we have one other announcement, and that is one of us is leaving. Well, two of us. I guess I just said that, but another one of us is leaving, and is he there? He's there, but he's in civvies. Chief Tony Delmonico is. I think this is his last council meeting as fire chief. He is retiring. I don't know why he's retiring, but there you go. This is a hand-me-down bottle of bubbly. That's it. That's your gift. Tony has been a dedicated member of his career, his chosen career, for decades, and chief here for a short time, but nonetheless made a big impression on us in the years that he was here as fire chief. And on behalf of Coquitlam City Council, I want to acknowledge and thank him for those years of service, for his decades of service to his career, and wish him all the best in a bright future as probably a consultant, right? Thank you very much. I think I'm done now. Okay.
Item 1 are minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, May 13th. The recommendation is that council approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 are minutes of the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing Task Group meeting held Friday, May 3rd. The recommendation is that council receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Sikora. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 3 relates to item on the public hearing agenda from this evening at City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4377-2013 for 761 Miller Avenue. The recommendation is that council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4377-2013.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Asmundson. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've got a few difficulties with this one. The difficulties are, the fact is, I know that we're trying to redevelop the city. To what size or how many units on each lot bothers me a whole lot. Because I think what we're doing is packing in the people like sardines into this city, and everybody wants to redevelop lots and put four houses on a lot, and parking that is off the lane. You know, to me, that's not developing a city. That's far from being developing the city. To me, I've never, ever seen in my life where the parking is all off the lane. The driveways are off the lane, parking is off the lane. In the older area, when they had a garage in the backyard that they drove into the lane and parked there, that was different. But here's the situation, that there's no driveways in front of the property, none whatsoever. And the fact is, everything's parked in the lane. And, you know, and I know that you can talk about the monster houses, you can be talking about the houses, you know, you'll talk about a house with a suite in it, you talk about the house with a cottage behind it and everything else, you know. And you know, to me, as I said, I served a notice of motion because I had a lot of complaints in monster houses. Can there be a couple monster houses on these lots? Yes, there can be. But I did serve a notice on the monster houses. It was unanimously passed that we do something about the monster houses. I haven't seen any movement on it. And it's been, what, 5-6 months ago since I served a notice of motion? I don't know when it's going to come back to us. But even tonight, some of the people are mentioning monster houses. So I don't know what it takes to maybe move it along. Or when can I see something happening, Mr. McIntyre?
Your Worship, yes, certainly staff are working on that. There was a notice of motion, there was discussion. In fact, Councillor Sikora and I went out for a bit of a field tour to view some of the properties. We are working on that right now, amongst many things. Our hope was to have something to council in the fall. And early in the fall, come forward with a report with some policy options and some different ideas. So it hasn't been lost. It's just caught up with a lot of other work we're engaged in right now.
And you know, the funny darn thing that, you know, whatever happens in this city, I seem to know first, because the people have known me in this community for many, many years, as a mayor, as a school trustee, and you name it. You know, I've been around for a number of years. So they phone me and they complain about these things. And you know, to me, I even hear where there's monster houses with 8 bathrooms in there. What do you think they're going to do?
Councillor Sikora,
I know, I realize what you're going to say. I realize what you're going to say.
You're the one who raised the issue.
Hold it just a second. That was when the public hearing was on. Richard,
okay, no, I'm sorry then. No, please go ahead then.
After the public hearing now. Only during the public hearing we had to talk to an issue. But now if I want to say about monster houses, I can be able to talk about monster houses. So well, that's something I'm going to do.
Actually, no.
The fact is, I'd like to see, you know, you hear all kinds of crazy things. On these things here, I see where there's 8 parking spaces off the lane. And not single parking to where they just pull out and away they go any time of the morning or day or night. But there's double parking, one behind each other. That's going to create a problem. I don't care who lives in that whether it's 2 cars belong to the same family or whatever it is. Somebody's got to move or somebody has to do something, and it's not comfortable. So, you know, I'll tell you, I know that this council is hell-bent for election to get, you know, high density in these in this city. There's a lot of people in our community like the style that they're in now. They love the style they're in now. They like to see their lots and their community stay as it is for many reasons, and I don't blame them for it, you know. But to just grab onto anything and 4 houses on one lot is just too much of density for me. And the parking, 3 parking spaces in the front for visitors. Is there going to be visitors just for this house? for these 4 units, or there'll be visitors from other homes that are in the area. You know, we gotta provide parking. And to me, I said, here's my motto: no parking, no building. And that's going to go for the high rises now too, because no parking, no building. We're going to create a problem in the city that, you know, some people be fighting for the parking spaces. And yeah, you know, our rapid transit's coming in, and there's bus service, but if I want to go from Coquitlam to Richmond, it'll take me 2 hours to get there by bus. Okay, so you know, it's impossible to get there. So, you know, we got to do a lot of thinking. What is it that we're doing? What kind of city do we want to see at the end? Do we want to see a cement jungle? High rises shoulder to shoulder with no parking? What is it that we're trying to see in this city? Do you want to see, do we want to see 4 houses in each lot?
Councillor Sikora, you'll have to stick to this particular application.
I said I'm talking. Mayor.
No, but you know the rules, Councillor Sikora. You enforce them for years.
I was a mayor before you were born, okay, so don't...
Well, actually, Councillor Sikora, you became mayor in 1980.
So anyways...
You became mayor in 1983.
I was a mayor probably before you were born.
Admittedly, I was in my 20s.
You know what? Believe it or not, you can learn a lot of things from me, but you don't want to.
I learn something from you every day.
Anyways, 4 units to a lot. And you can imagine 4 units a lot, just a little ways from this department. Did we not red tag a house for being too high? Yes, we did. Just a little area from here, there's all kinds of monster houses going up. There could be also 4 on that lot or whatever it is. So therefore, the mayor's on my back, so I'll get him off my back by not saying anything else. I'll just vote against it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, the mayor's not on your back. It's actually council that sets the rules. You voted in favor of the rules that you just broke, but no big deal. You did mention that your notice of motion was 6 months ago. It was in January. It was late January. But in any case, that's fine. I've got Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. We heard from a large number of people tonight. It's always gratifying to get a great turnout. We also got a petition with a whole lot of signatures. I didn't count them, but there's an awful lot of people on this petition. It's quite clear it's against the rezoning. It says the rezoning is not suited for the area. The land's already zoned RT1. Well, that's why they're asking for rezoning, because it's zoned RT1. Building duplexes would be more in the character of the neighborhood. That may be so, but the issue here is density. The issue, I think, for most of the people who've spoken against this is they don't want all this crowding. They don't want all these people. It seems quite clear to me that the same number of families are going to live on that property with these 4 small units as could live in 2 duplexes or 2 single-family homes with carriage houses behind, what have you. So we're not putting any more people in the neighborhood than could already go into the neighborhood. But because of the approach that the developer's taken, they have to pass muster with our planning staff. They have to think about issues like privacy and appearance, form and character. And I'm learning all this planning language. These houses will not lean over and look into your backyard. The windows on the sides of the house are specifically designed to preclude that, and it's a two-way street because those windows are designed that way in these new homes. Nobody can look in them either. So it works for everybody. Parking is from the back lane, which will change one piece of traffic pattern. The 6 or 8 vehicles approaching this new project will approach via the lane, not by the street. That'll be less traffic on the street. If they have visitors, they'll find places to park on the street, but they would have anyway. The parking provided for these 4 units is in excess of our requirements. The proponent didn't have to do that. Yeah, 2 of them are 2 tandem rows, and those are a little awkward. I lived in one of those with, when I was a young man, my father, my brother, and I had 3 cars parked in the driveway, and it's just like Councillor Sikora says, it's the guy at the front who needs to go out. My father had a simple solution. He took the car at the back. That was, but so parking, I think, has been dealt with appropriately. The issues of privacy have been dealt with. Traffic will be no more than it might have been with any other kind of development on the site, and it'll be better located because it'll be coming and going through the lane instead of down the front street. And it speaks to affordability and makes it possible for people to have homes who might otherwise not have been able to, and helps us build the kind of community that we want to have, and will give you, and wait and see, you'll get a bunch of good neighbors, young people with families, kids running up and down the block, and I think it'll work out very well for you. I've spoken at some length because I don't want you to think that I'm ignoring the things you've said to me. I've weighed them. I've considered them very carefully. But we're a growing community. We have to accommodate the people. I want a city where my son lives at the far end of Maple Ridge and my daughter lives in the cheapest house in Port Moody. I wanted my kids to live in Coquitlam where I live, then they could vote for me.
So that's what this is all about.
I'll need it, yes. Thank you, Councillor Sikora. I need every vote I can get, and I'll go out and shamelessly hound for them. Thank you. And you've taken me right off the track, but I'm not going to talk about monster homes or anything like that this evening. I hope you appreciate that all of us on council consider the input that we get from the residents very carefully and make the decision that we think is best for our community, our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, I mean, like Councillor Nicholson, I think, you know, we take these decisions very seriously, and you know, and it's you know, it's nice to see so many people come out tonight, and people who care about their neighborhood and care about their community. And it's always tough because, you know, when you have a community that's in transition, and many of our neighborhoods are in transition, whether it's up on Burke Mountain or Coquitlam, and we're seeing more and more development in existing neighborhoods, and you know, that brings change to a neighborhood. It brings change to way of life. It means new neighbors coming in, and it also means that there's changes possibly to parking, to traffic patterns in a street. And you know, and I sort of look at this and sort of thought and think, you know, I sort of empathize with the people who live in the neighborhood, because there is going to be change if this goes through. But at the same time, we also have to look ahead to what our community is going to look like in 30 years, and where are our kids going to live. And the city is growing, the province is growing, and people need to find places to live, and the lots are getting smaller. And people are going to have to share the land and move closer together. And so this is a really, really tough, because council went on a tour in North Vancouver shortly after I got onto council, and we saw some great examples of lots where they had put 4 homes together and carriage houses, and we all came away saying, wow, this is great, look what we can do. And then it's really tough, because when you come back and then you actually see it on a map in your own neighborhood, and you say, well, you know, this is something that I want to do, I know it's something we should do, but it's really tough when you see it in one of your own neighborhoods, that we're actually talking about putting 4 homes on a lot just like we saw. And the ones we saw in North End, they were beautiful. The design, the way the homes came together, and they didn't look out of place. But when I went to North Vancouver, I was seeing it for the first time. I didn't see it through the eyes of the people who had lived in that neighborhood before that change. I went in and saw a new neighborhood, and I liked what I saw. And then I come back to my own community and I realize that now I have to make decisions that are going to impact the existing residents in that neighborhood, but I have to also think ahead to how's this neighborhood going to look into the future, and if this is the right way to go, how do we minimize the impact on traffic and parking, and also recognizing, as other councillors said before me, that it's possible that we could have just as many families living on that piece of property anyway. They could all be in a monster house, they could be in a duplex with extra suites that maybe they shouldn't have. They could be in a house with a carriage home in the back. And I think what we see here is it's actually laid out for us. And the one thing I do like about this development is that the developers paid attention to the parking. And I agree with Councillor Sikora on the, no parking, no building. And, I have been harping on parking on developments all around the city. And when I see 4 houses being constructed with 8 spots, to me, that at least there's some recognition that there's parking being provided. And I think you would be hard-pressed to, and I know we have some street parking, but to require more than 8 spots. I've seen, larger homes where there can be 6 cars for one house, but these are smaller homes, and they each have 2 spots off the street. And we still have the 3 spots in the front for visitors. So I do believe that in this case, parking has been addressed. But I think that we have to recognize that we have to find affordable homes for our future residents, and this is a desirable neighborhood. And the people that spoke tonight, many of them have lived here for many years, and they came to this neighborhood because it was a desirable place in Coquitlam to live. And it's still a desirable place. It's near schools. It's going to be near a SkyTrain station. And we're going to see young couples and come to this area to raise their kids in this neighborhood. And the type of home that they want to live in or are able to afford is very different than the type of home that I grew up in Coquitlam, and very different than the home that I'm raising my kids in. But this is the future of housing in the Lower Mainland. This is where we're going. We're going to carriage homes and smaller homes, and this is just the reality of it. And I think that what we have to do is try to find a way we can address the reality and do it in a way that we can try to minimize the impact in the community. And I think that looking through this process, this development proposal, to me, it addresses a number of issues. It addresses parking, it addresses the smaller homes and affordable, and I think there's a lot going for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I had myself on the list. Because there was a number of people that came here to speak about specific issues, and parking obviously is always one of them. I said it at the time, I was impressed with the way they've addressed parking. In fact, to some degree, I think I might have been less impressed if they hadn't put in the tandem parking, because you can only put, it's a 60-foot lot, you can only put 6 cars across the back. So the tandem is a bonus. We've seen applications like this, and in fact the ones that Councillor Hodge just referred to in North Vancouver, they were 6 across the back without the tandem parking. So they helped 2 more that were actually on the street in the front, and they worked. These are projects that worked. I spoke to the occupants of these homes in some cases, and this was typically a young family raising their family, and they were able to afford a single-family home detached within in North Vancouver, and these are families that would not be able to have been able to afford a single-family home in Coquitlam, let alone in North Van, close to Vancouver. For it to be detached, it is affordable. Councillor Nicholson mentioned that. There was a comment made, though, that if this project goes through, your neighborhood will change. Well, actually, your neighborhood will change. It will. We are seeing the redevelopment of homes built in the 60s and the 50s and the 40s. We're seeing those homes redeveloped, those properties redeveloped. We're seeing them redeveloped in ways that people are uncomfortable with. We hear more complaints now about the Monster House. Councillor Sikora was right. We hear those complaints all the time about the Monster House. There's 2 not far from my church that absolutely astound me. They are enormous. They are the 8,000 square foot, or I'm not sure how big they are, but they're bigger than these 4 homes put together. They are ridiculously large, and and they don't fit in at all with the neighborhood. They aren't two-story. They are four-story shapes, three-story buildings, and it's that change that we hear more complaints about. We looked at the ones in North Vancouver, for example, and we saw a streetscape that hadn't changed. It was small homes built in the 70s next to small homes built last year, because they were the same scale of house as has always been there. So when Councillor Hodge says, you know, this is the future, we're going to be building smaller homes now. Well, actually, no, we're going to be building the homes that I grew up in. I grew up in an 880 square foot home in Coquitlam. That home got expanded once, so it's about 1,200 square feet, and I hope it doesn't get torn down and someone build a 6,000 square foot house on there, because those are homes that we will have to change in 20 years because we simply can't. Our culture, our region is so boxed in that we won't be able to abide these massive homes. We'll have to adapt them. So we're going to be building smaller homes, and the only way we're going to be able to make it affordable is by making sure that the footprint, the share of the dirt, is smaller as well, because that's ultimately the determinant of the cost of the housing. The sale price is going to be around 3 times the lot price, and so if you can get the per unit land value down to the 250,000, for example, or 200,000, then you can produce single-family homes that are affordable for young families. I don't think we can possibly achieve that in Coquitlam unless we embark on that program, and that means that these neighborhoods of 60 by 120 lots are going to change. They're either going to change in ways that we design, or they're going to change in ways that are monsters and in ways that make us uncomfortable. Councillor Asmussen?
Thank you. I'm going to support this application. Been a lot of good discussion about it, and I was one of the people when this application first came to council about the parking. I've turned down some of these because of the parking. This applicant here went back and did adjust the parking, take it from 6 off the lane to make it a tandem with 8 off the back. And I thank them for taking that consideration because it is an issue in this area. The one consideration, though, is by eliminating the driveway off the front, you are creating more street parking on Miller for everybody. Remember, the street is everybody's parking. It doesn't belong to one house or any. It's public property where everybody comes. So when you have visitors, visitors will park along the whole street. People don't have visitors in their house every day or every week, so that it's a random thing that parking comes into that area. So I think the parking's looked after. I think the other issue is right today with present zoning, you can have 4 living units on that property, 2 units that people own, 2 rental units, where you can have people changing over and have more transiency in the neighborhood. With these 4 units here, you're going to have 4 owned homes at 1,700 square feet. At 1,700 square feet up and down, and I looked at the drawings, there isn't a way that you're going to be able to suite a 1,700 square foot home. So you're going to have 4 owners living, staying in that area, creating stability in that neighborhood. And I think that's a good thing for the neighborhood from that perspective. It's a strata. The strata has rules, and what we learned up there is all neighbors in the strata, they own the common property. They look after each other and they watch each other to make sure that everything's kept up to standard, because they all have a common interest on making sure that their properties stay well and look good together. So you don't get any deterioration in the look or things being stored improperly in there, because there's rules within stratas. Petitions, we talk about cities providing information to the public. But sometimes when petitions go out and we as council look at it, because we take it seriously when people get a petition, we see a lot of names. But at the same time, you have to wonder, the people that signed the petition, did they understand when they signed that petition that today, without this rezoning, that there could be 4 units on that property anyways? I don't think they understood that. They may have had a different reaction if they knew more information when they signed the petition. And I think petitions are important for council. We also have to understand and look at the issue of what people and information they were provided when they signed that petition. So when I look at this project, it creates 4 units, independent, livable units. It has 8 units, 2 more than that's required by the zoning bylaw. You're creating more parking on the street by closing off the driveway on the street. So you're adding more parking for everybody in the neighborhood, just not this house, but everybody by closing off the driveway. So it's becoming a benefit for the parking in that area. I've been out to the area, I've driven there, and Miller Avenue, I guess, is a wider road than all the neighbors in it, probably because it connects up to the school. So it has a wider carriage road in that area than most of the other local roads around it because of the traffic volumes of the school. And that's what, I live by a school, and that's what you got to live with. I live beside a school, 10 to 9, 5 after 9, 10 to 3, 10 after 3. It's blitzed with traffic. I lived with that for years. That's just what you live with because you live by a school. That's just the way it's going to be, and that isn't going to go away. So I think the architect has, and the proponent has taken the concerns at first reading, went with them, made some corrections. I think it's a good development. It meets requirements, and for the other issue, it does create 4 more affordable. I don't know if I would call them affordable, but it makes them more affordable to a range of people. And I think when they get into the neighborhood, people will look at them from the street, because we went to North Vancouver, I was up there. From the street, on all these ones that we saw, it looks like 2 single-family houses facing the streets, as you would have you had 2 single families with a suite in it, and the other houses off the back. You wouldn't even notice that those other houses were off the back. And this fits those designs, so I think this is going to look good in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last 2 speakers are 2 departing. Councillor Reamer, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. Well, this is a really difficult decision, especially when you get so many people out to your public hearing. We received many emails, and we've received the petition, of course. And so that really tells us that there is very legitimate concern out there for this. Change is never very easy. In fact, it's just human nature to resist change of any type. But we're at the point in our society where we need to provide more affordable housing, we need to provide greater choice, and we need to do infill in a sensitive manner. What we learned over in North Vancouver was that sensitive infill could be done, and it could be done well. What we saw in North Vancouver was of high quality. And I think Council, when they made the decision a couple of years ago to look at different housing choices, had the North Vancouver example in mind. And now we're beginning that process here in Coquitlam of doing sensitive infill well. I do think the developer addressed many of the concerns tonight. They've gone above and beyond with the parking. There's on-street parking, and of course a public street is available for anybody to use. It's not necessarily just designated for people in that particular house, but anybody in the neighborhood can park on the street. So it's in that vein that I am going to go ahead and approve this. I do think, as I said, that this is going to be a high-quality housing choice, sensitive infill, and I think the developer has gone to a lot of trouble to look at the concerns and to make adjustments to what they had originally come forward with. So I will be approving this. Thank you.
And Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Well, I too am going to support this, and rather than beleaguer the arguments why I think it's all of my colleagues, pretty much all of my colleagues, have made, I think, some fabulous observations, and I concur. I think it's a high-quality project, and this is the direction that we have committed to moving in terms of making our community more affordable as well as more appealing. So I look forward to seeing this this being developed in our community.
Thank you very much. And I'll reiterate finally the comments I think Councillor Nicholson made. We all listened very intently when people spoke on this issue. This isn't a question of us dismissing concerns. This is a question of us listening intently. We're trying to manage the concerns of an entire community, and in this case, balance them against the concerns of residents. And so I know that I did, and I know that I have a lot of respect for my council colleagues, and I believe they listened as well. I'm afraid we can't hear any. We can't have any dialogue at this. That's fine, but we can't. It would be against the law for us to receive any information. We can't have a dialogue at this point. It's actually that's just the rules we live by. They're provincial rules. We're not allowed to. Okay. Motion's on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? Motion. Councillor Sikora is opposed. The motion carries.
Item 4 also is the subject of tonight's public hearing, City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4396/2013, relating to the properties at 1423, 1435, 1445, and 1455 Dayton Street. The recommendation is that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4396/2013.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 5 is the last item on this evening's public hearing agenda. City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4392/2013, relating to the property at 1139 Charland Avenue. The recommendation is that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4392/2013.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 6, preliminary report for text amendments to the RM apartment zones and the C7 Transit Village Commercial Zone, Bylaw number 4393/2013. The recommendation is that Council give first reading to City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4393/2013 and refer the bylaw to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 7 is the proposed Partington Creek Neighbourhood Plan, Bylaw number 4391/2013. The recommendation is that Council give first reading to Citywide Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4391/2013. 2, in accordance with the Local Government Act, consider the bylaw in conjunction with the City's 2013 5-year financial plan bylaw number 4367/2012 and the Regional Solid Waste Management Plan. 3, having given consideration to the requirements of Section 879 of the Local Government Act and having previously requested staff to consult with potentially affected agencies, direct staff to send copies of the bylaw to the following agencies prior to public hearing as listed, and refer the bylaw to public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Robinson. Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you. It's very good to see this was at committee, and I only have one other question. We asked a lot, and staff got back to some of our concerns within the report. The one thing I did talk about is within our townhousing zones, where we have so much more townhouses, is about some of the green space within some of those areas I mentioned in the committee. And since these people don't have backyards, a lot of these townhouses, there may be a need for some green space. So one of the ideas that came up since the committee meeting was whether we can look at doing some stacked townhousing in these areas along arterials or collectors to free up some green space to create some open areas for the peoples within these areas. I would only think of it on collectors or arterials could be a buffer for development in behind, but it could be a way of maintaining the same level of density but allowing some more green space for all the people in that neighborhood. And I don't know if that's proposed within the zoning at the present time or if that's something that has to be changed at a future date. I don't want to hold this up.
Your Worship, no, it's a very good question. And I know we've heard similar comments around like the notion of green streets
Yeah.
and incorporating that into the village center. And I know at the staff level we've talked about, well, why not combine green streets with townhouses? And so I think it works towards that. Let me take that away off. There's a discussion not just between the community planning group, but also our development side, finding the right zoning. I guess my quick response would be I would see that as entirely feasible in the village center area, where we may be looking at a little higher density multifamily, not just restricting ourselves to townhouses, but in a form where you could get that stacked townhouse and maybe create a little more open space at grade.
Well, yes, but when you get outside the town center area and you get along Cedar Drive, off Victoria Drive within the area, there's large areas down to the southern part where you're away from parks. So I'm looking at in some of these areas off the a collector road or something in small areas to raise it up, open it up, some more green space in that. It's just an idea in those areas where you have, in some areas like that are townhousing, it's densified, it's just taking it from being straight across the street one level, bringing it up in certain areas, not everywhere, just certain areas, just to open up some more green space. I like the idea of either brownstones or possibly townhousing facing each other with the green street in front to add some more amenities in those areas. But if a green street within a townhouse complex, would that become under strata? That still would be a public full use then? That's another question.
You'd have options that way, would be the response, but certainly in a larger townhouse project where it's under a strata, that would then likely be common property. You could have it covered by a public right-of-way, too, to allow for the public to come through there, but I think there's a number of options. So let us take it away, we'll discuss it, and maybe the public hearing, if there's still some question, we can respond at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, and congratulations for bringing this to this point. I just have, I guess, a couple of comments and observations. This is a document that on paper has a certain look, but we don't know exactly how it's going to play out because it's just really it's a visioning document. And I've learned in my 5 years that planners love to plan, but they don't really like to measure the results of the plan. There's a bit of a disconnect. So I'm just going to come in with some of the measuring things because I do think it's important that we do the things, that we take a look and make sure that, how do we know we have a good plan? Well, we only have a good plan when we actually implement it and then we see the results. Did it work the way we thought? So, we talk about it being pedestrian friendly. And so you can build all the sidewalks that you want, but if no one's using them, you're not pedestrian friendly. So the measure of how much sidewalks we have is not actually the measure. So we need to sort of make sure that are people walking to their destinations? That's really going to tell us whether or not this is pedestrian friendly. The other thing so there's a couple things that stand out. Under the guiding principles, we talk about encouraging a variety of housing choices and tenures to accommodate people with a diversity of lifestyles, incomes, and mobility levels. And so I think it's really important that we pay attention to that because otherwise we wind up with a community of just rich people. And unless we have policies that make sure that we have that, then we will not live up to this plan. And so that needs to be monitored, I think, very closely because from what I've seen from some of the other plans, that's part of what's happening in some of our other neighborhood plans. And that worries me because I don't think that's good for anybody. We don't have the diversity that we said that we would have. So I think we need to monitor that. And we need to be able to tweak policies to make sure that we have that. And the same thing goes with mobility levels that I noticed later on in the plan. We talk about encouraging adaptable housing, and I'm not convinced that that's strong enough because we have been encouraging and we get a bone or two from developers. Well, we'll just give you 1 or 2 units, and that doesn't cut it. So I think I would like to see us take a stronger position and have either require percentages or something, but to have units that are to have whole complexes that are adaptable. It's not new anymore. So those are just and we've done a great job, I think, around on page 12E when we talk about working towards providing parks within 10-minute walking distance, recognizing hillside condition. I think that's an excellent outcome statement. Because we can actually measure that. We can actually take a look at that. So that's the kind of flavor that I think is really important that we have. So the last thing I'm going to say just about that walkability and cycling, the Greenway bicycle map, which is Schedule F, it doesn't have where the general areas of where the schools are going to be. And I think that you need to identify where the schools are going to be on your cycling map, on your cycling route, because if we're trying to encourage kids to go to school by bike, then we need to have some sense of that. And finally, it's helpful to have the grades indicated. And I know that the very last sheet we got was the grades, but it's really hard to see. So if there's any way on this map to indicate what the grades are periodically, on these routes, if we, and even if it's just a range, this is 3 to 5%, and this is 12 to 15%. which is quite the feat. If you're on a bicycle, it would be helpful. So even if there's different areas where you could just indicate what the grade might be, it would be really helpful. So those are just some of my preliminary comments, and I look forward to public hearing and hearing what the community has to say.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, thank you. It's nice to see this coming forward now. It's been a long time in the planning, and I think what we have here, I'm looking forward to getting the community's feedback on this. As somebody who went through community planning and neighborhood planning as a resident on Burke Mountain, I've seen this from the other side of the issue. But I've also seen that we go into these plans, with great expectation and great hope, and then sometimes it doesn't turn out quite the way we had expected. So we have another opportunity to get it right. I think we've learned from some things that worked well in previous neighborhoods up there, and I think have identified some things that haven't worked quite so well, things such as parking. One of the things that did work well was the Green Street. I think we've had time to go back and look at that. I know in the narrative we mention green streets, but we talk about there's an opportunity for it. Well, there always has been an opportunity for it. I think we need stronger. I think we need to encourage the Green Street, not just say that if a developer were to propose a Green Street within the plan area, staff would consider the lessons learned. I think that we have to promote. And I know we're going to be doing a report back on that, on the Green Street that we've done, and I hope that if it is favorable, that we will use that and really promote the green streets, because I think we're going to have to create open space up there. We're going to have a much higher density in this neighborhood than we've seen in the other neighborhoods. I think that I do still believe that we are light on park space. I know that Burke Mountain is well served in comparison to other areas of the city. But the lesson we've learned in other areas of the city is when we create the density and the neighborhood changes, it's very difficult to go back in later and create parks. So we have an opportunity, once again, to learn and to get it right here, so that we're not faced with problems 30, 40 years from now, how we're going to create space where it doesn't exist. Space is a valuable commodity. We have a chance to plan that space today, and hope that we learn from lessons past, and we plan that space accordingly. Also, I noticed that with the bears, we are looking at ways to protect the bears that are in there. We are expanding even further into their territory. I noticed that on page 20 of the report, under the bear risk management, policy B, item 2, it says providing individual bear-resistant garbage and recycling containers for each multifamily residential unit and secure space for storing containers. And I really hope that store space is something that is a lock-up and locked away. And I hope that we've talked about that. I hope that's what that means. Just this morning, I had my wife chased a bear out of our neighborhood. The bear knew that it was 8:30 in the morning. It was garbage time, and Darla was out there with a horn honking, trying to scare the bear away. And unfortunately, that bear now knows the garbage schedule, and we have bears in the neighborhood. So the bears are smart. They're going to figure it out. So I think that going to bear-resistant containers and providing the storage when the residents get in, and getting the new residents familiar with the drill up front, I think that's part of the neighborhood plan. And so I look forward to seeing improvements and learning from our experience in the other. So I'm looking forward to getting public input. We've heard some at the open houses, and I think this is going to be very interesting as this process goes forward. I thank you for the work that's done to date, and I look forward to the process moving ahead. Thank you.
And I will say only one thing: the Green Street, I want to see it repeated. It's an enormous success. But I just want to see it repeated. I think we should be looking at being creative in that way, with more aspects of that Easter egg hunt was an absolutely amazing event again this year, and I can only imagine the community building that can go on with green streets in a way that can't happen on a regular street, and I just want to see it. Okay. Seeing none others. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. My deep appreciation on behalf of council to all of the staff that were involved in that and everyone that had input. Fair amount of work. It was probably weeks of work there.
Weeks, years.
Mr. McIntyre, do you have any comments about that?
Item 8 is a preliminary report on application for zoning amendment bylaw number 4389, 2013, proposed one-family residential subdivision at 1388 Gabriola Drive. The recommendation is that council give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 4389, 2013, refer the bylaw to public hearing, and direct staff to bring forward a future report seeking authorization of acquisition of land that is over and above the required 5% park dedication area and additional lands being dedicated by the developer at no cost to the city, utilizing parkland acquisition development cost charge funds.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Robinson. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I have a question that I didn't ask earlier. I went down to Caliente Place and just took a look to get a sense of just how narrow that roadway is, and noticed that there is a sewer drain just in front of the retaining wall. And it looks like servicing goes under the retaining wall. And I can show you the picture. I've got it right here. So I just wanted to get a sense of servicing and how that would work for those properties, given the retaining wall.
Your Worship, the retaining wall is, I believe, right on the property line. You're probably talking inches in that location as to where the catch basin is relative to that property line. The servicing for the properties are for the new properties or for the existing properties?
For the new properties.
The new properties.
Does it go under? Does it go under the wall?
No, the wall beyond the wall is private property. It would be serviced off of the extension of Caliente Place.
It's in the. So it is in the road.
It's in the road.
Okay,
yes.
It's just maybe just to see.
You're talking inches, but that wall was poured after that was in place, and it was probably poured with they shot the level, and it was right on that line.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hodge.
Well, I'm looking forward to this going to a public hearing. We've heard a lot about it in the years, in the last couple of years leading up to this, and it's interesting because I think that a number of the concerns that I originally heard have been addressed. I'm sure that we're going to have residents come out and express support and concerns for it. I know that one of the things that I've heard most recently, again, no surprise, is parking and traffic. And so we can anticipate, I think, during the public hearing that we will hear concerns about the traffic and about the parking. And I think a lot of it can, that we will hear solutions of what has planned. But the one that I haven't heard anything about is the intersection of Gabriola and Pipeline. And this it's an issue today. It's come up with neighbors. We've had emails about it already, and it would be nice that, and I don't expect an answer tonight, but I think that when this comes to the public hearing, I know there's going to be questions about enhancement for that intersection, possibly signalization, and it would be nice that at that time we could have some answers, because I know that there will be questions coming in that regard. So it would be nice. I think that the others certainly will hear questions about parking and the usual questions. But that is one that I know will come up is how to deal with the residents of 38 homes now coming into that area. The other thing that I'm curious about, I noticed that we have I guess it's a linear park that follows along the bottom of my drawing here. That's, I guess, it's a roadway. I guess it's the Trans-Canada Trail on the top. But is that my understanding is that that's possibly, I guess, actually an access road or something over a storm line, or is that a service line in there?
Yes, it's a utility corridor that has then also been utilized as a park access. So it is an existing trail, quite wide, crushed gravel, and it does provide a good connection.
Right.
It's actually quite a nice trail.
It's providing a buffer between the existing homes, so it's going to be homes are back to back.
Yes.
We have this, it is a recognized trail through there.
Yes.
Are there any other services that you know in there? Is it just the storm line?
I think it's just the storm. Well, I don't know for sure, but you could see the outfall is a massive outfall to a very, very large structure.
Major.
And it's a major system under there. It's a very, very large pipe.
Right.
I don't know, I don't have offhand the information on any other utilities on that
That's
corridor.
just a catchment from up above.
Yes.
I was curious, and I had a comment today from somebody in the area and said, has there ever been any thought to open that? I know in a lot of areas that we've done creek remediation, we've done daylighting and this sort of thing, and I'm just sort of thinking that that's a pipe that goes underneath a long walkway, and I'm just wondering for enhancements in the area if there's been any thought to possibly using this as an opportunity to try to daylight or open that up.
And I've been reminded there are some utility lines above this corridor as well. So that might be a mitigating factor to any work that occurs on there.
Okay, I was just curious if there were opportunities there. Great, I look forward to the public hearing. Thank you.
Okay. Motion on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 9 is the 2013 Spirit of Coquitlam Grant Program, and we have introductory comments by our Acting General Manager of Parks, Recreation and Culture Services.
Move approval.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of Council. As you're aware, this is the final version of the 2013 Spirit of Coquitlam Grant Program. This has been produced by, after feedback from applicants, a review of best practices, and of most importance, some direction from Council at 2 previous committee meetings this spring. Just in summary, the new grant program combines the 3 previous grant programs into one. It has 2 intakes per year as per Council direction. That starts in September this year. And in terms of the ranking criteria, we're looking at sliding scale ranking versus more prescriptive measurements such as other funding sources and residency, as Council had wished. And of course, there's substantive grant application support for implementation of the program.
Okay.
Move approval. Second.
Moved by Councillor Segura, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I will be excusing myself for the next 2 items,
Okay.
as
We're getting
it
snug.
could be a provincial city conflict.
And I think I'll be excused, so then we don't have a quorum.
I'll go get Selena.
Okay. No, I think Councillor Sikora was just teasing us with his absence. Yes, his proposed absence.
Move the item.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Hodge.
We did have introductory comments by our General Manager of Engineering and Public Works.
I don't know if it's necessary, Your Worship. Just very briefly, there is lack of traction in a number of major transportation issues. We have lost the United Boulevard extension a year or so ago. Very little action on the North Fraser Perimeter Road, and the province a number of years ago took out of scope any significant improvements to the Brunette interchange. So we have been pursuing with New Westminster a 2-lane bridge, and you can see at the Bailey Bridge location, New Westminster is not in favor of that. They clearly don't want this to occur. The appropriate process at this point is to engage in alternative dispute resolution per the community charter, and guidance in the back of the report. You will find excerpts from the relevant ministry, and their guidance is that intermunicipal bridges, intermunicipal highways certainly can be applied for this dispute resolution process. Ultimately, the process would lead to binding arbitration, but that would be the last step in a process that we assume would at least start with mediation and see if we can work on this together. So that's by way of introduction. Thank you.
There you go. Sounds like a plan. The motion's on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 11 is regarding regional policing resolution. The recommendation that Council endorse and convey to the province that a regional approach to certain policing services is supported where there are economies of scale, such as the current integrated teams, and that to ensure effective and efficient delivery of the regional components, participation of all municipalities be mandated by the province based on a governance oversight model acceptable to municipalities.
Moved by Councillor Score, second by Councillor Asmundson. I agree enormously. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That's what you were waiting for. Talk.
Item 12, Information and Communications Technology Review. The recommendation is that Council receive the staff report for information.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Reamer. Discussion on this one. You guys, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
That concludes the items on our regular agenda.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Nicholson to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We will now have a public question period for any members of the audience. Please line up there if you have any questions to ask on tonight's agenda. Please don't push. Any questions at all? Any questions at all? Third and final time. Thank you all for coming.